Well, it's good to have you right here on Youth Assembly, on Click Naija Radio, Internet Radio. It's good to be back this 11th day or 9th day of November 2020. Yes, in case I haven't said Happy New Month to you, well, Happy New Month and welcome. My name is Sylvia Ishebe. Well, today on Youth Assembly, we will be looking at EndSARS protest aftermath. Does Nigeria need the social media regulation? That is a question we'll be asking right here on the show. As we know, various states across the country commenced the rebuilding process following the violence, destruction of lives and properties by hoodlums who hijacked the recent EndSARS protest. And some concerned Nigerians have called for the regulation of social media. Now, these calls are based on the view that inciting posts and fake news shared on social media by influencers and celebrities helped fuel the violence experienced in the streets. Now, however, the call have been opposed by so many Nigerians who say regulation of social media is a violation of the right to freedom of speech and thus anti-democratic. Well, we'll get to find out more from the guests we have today as we look at EndSARS aftermath. Does Nigeria need social media regulation? Well, today I have with me Dr. Adeja Sunday. Welcome, Dr. Adeja Sunday.
Thank you for having me.
He is a lecturer and a political analyst. We also have Mr. Andy Madaki. Mr. Andy Madaki is a communications consultant. Welcome, Mr. Andy.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so social media bill. What do you think? Do you think Nigeria needs social media regulation to tackle fake news as we have it now, Mr. Andy?
Okay, so I'll speak from a very professional angle. Besides being a communications consultant, I have a background in computer forensics and I lecture a master's class in information security at College de Paris in France. And so IT security is something which I'm very much aware of. When you talk about social media bill of any sort, first of all, my answer is no, we don't need any further social media regulation. And that's because you already have an act, which is the Cybercrime Act of 2015, specifically Section 24, which covers most of what they want to do. Now, they speak about a hate speech commission. You already have the Terrorism Act, which I think Section 4 or 5 covers whatever they're trying to say or do. Now, the reality which we need to understand is we've gone from saying governments and people in authority. We've gone from saying governments and people in authority saying social media wasn't making any difference, and so it was just talk. To now, the same people in authority are blaming the same social media for trying to disrupt government, or even going as far as saying regime change. Now, I don't think that's so because social media is just a small chunk of society. And if I was in government, I would understand the sentiment of the people in the public via social media to understand what's on the street. So if you think people are angry on social media,
Yeah.
you should use it as analytics, as a population sample to let you know how the general public feels. And so because they had disregarded the voices on social media, when it got to the streets, it went beyond the educated elites and the privileged youths who had access to the internet, to the real Nigerians on the streets who took it in their own direction. So if the government of the day listens to social media, uses it for research and to get information, then they get a feel of what the masses are feeling and use it to solve problems as opposed to saying it as opposition. Any social media regulation right now is just trying to stifle free speech and to stop criticism of government.
Okay, let's hear from Dr. Adeja, who is a lecturer and a political analyst. What do you think about the social media regulation? Doctor. Okay, let's hear from Dr. Adeja.
Well, I think fundamentally we don't need the regulation for the usage of the social media. But be that as it may, behind what the government intends to do, what are the factors, instigating the government to want to put these things in place. Of course, one major issue has to do with hate speech and how the social media has become a platform where people are being incited. But like my colleague has said, rightly said, in fact, there are all manner of laws in proliferate, laws. That is not the way out of this thing. We must remember that we're in a democratic system, and in every democratic system, one fundamental attribute of democracy is fundamental human rights. And freedom of speech, freedom of expression is captured within this right. And as citizens of this country, we have the right to express our freedom as to what we think about government, whether the government is doing fine or not. And so, for me, I don't think we need that regulation now. It will amount to violating human rights. And instead of the government to take a look, reevaluate the policies of government, reevaluate the performance of the government, whether or not the government is in bringing up policy by all means, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Oh, okay. But we look at the EndSARS protest and the aftermath. What happened after the protest or during the protest? And people have likened to it to the violence that was experienced to the role of celebrities and influencers in the EndSARS protest. Now, some have called for the prosecution of these influencers and their platforms who shared fake news on their platforms. So, do you think this is necessary? And do you think it will help curb fake news in Nigeria, Mr. Andy? Okay, Mr. Andy, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, yes.
Good. Sorry, my
Okay,
microphone was off. So I say I feel as a nation we need to be honest because one of the blessings of social media is we got to see everything that happened real
Mm.
time. And so these protests were peaceful for the first 10 days. There was absolutely no problem until the Monday where we saw a Lagos State government BRC bus come out with a group of touts, and some of them were wielding cutlasses in Lagos on the Monday. And then on
Mm.
Tuesday, there are pictures and videos of police cars dropping touts with sticks trying to attack peaceful protesters. Now, these are videos all over social media, all over the internet. So this isn't alleged. There was a video of a car where an SUV where there were men who appeared to be from the Department of State Security, and they had come out to say no, those were associates to a senator. None of that senator, there's been no investigation into him. The BRT Corporation, which had the bus, which brought the protester thugs in Lagos to attack peaceful protests, there's been no investigation or interrogation. Now, those are pictures of people which we have seen. But to now choose to say it is the utterances of celebrities
And the
online that
pictures
inspired those
they
people
shared
and
on
the pictures they
videos.
shared. Now, the truth of the matter is that yes, the truth of the matter is that that's why you have a national orientation agency. What are you doing
Mm.
to counter it? So, see the US election, for every disinformation, Twitter would counter it and say, we don't think this is true. The Nigerian government should liaise with them to say, how can we have a fact check system? The Nigerian National Orientation Agency should have their fact check system to counter it. Because, in the same vein, we have seen legitimate news, and the handle of the Nigerian Army and Ministry of Interior Affairs had come out and called it fake news. So, what happens when even the government is involved in this misinformation of the people? So it's not about prosecuting anybody. It's about one, how are you educating the people about what's misinformation? Two, how are you countering this fake news? And three, how is the government taking responsibility if they are found to be on the side of the table spreading this misinformation? So we
But we
can't
haven't.
address this
Have we
from
had
one
any
part.
instance yet of that? Well, fake news, as you say. You say when government is also culpable, what do they do? But it's on the rise. There's no doubt that it's on the rise on social media, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to separate what is real from what is fake. So how do you think fake news can be brought under control with you analyzing it now and telling us how different people play a role? So how can we curb it going forward?
As individuals, we need to learn to fact check information. If you see a picture on social media, you can take it and put it in Google and it will tell you the source of that picture. If you see
Okay.
certain news, a simple Twitter search or Facebook search will tell you if other people are talking about it. You see some information now between August to October of 2020, close to 100,000 fake accounts were created on social media. I had at least 600 follow me on Twitter. And so when I see comments from certain accounts, I go to check how recent was this created? What type of information has this person been pushing out? So as people, we shouldn't be quick to retweet, to repost. The era of
Okay.
wanting to be the first person to share information is wrong. And so we need to educate ourselves by saying verify first, do a search on this person. It takes you just an extra 2 minutes to verify. And so we need to re-educate ourselves on this as opposed to just saying there's a problem. And then another part is the media has a role to play. Social media and new media is taking the role of traditional media. And so someone with 1,000 followers feels I'm now a blogger and they start posting stuff. So the Nigerian Union of Journalists should find a way to build a relationship with this online community. And even if it means giving free classes on the ethics of journalism, which most of them don't know, that would be helpful. But you cannot just go and say, oh, you did this, we're arresting you. When you see the chain and the circumstances surrounding it, it's even harder for anybody to prosecute. So I wouldn't put down influencers or celebrities. All they do is amplify a voice which is already there.
Okay, so if you just tuned in, well, it is Click Naija and Youth Assembly is the show. Today we are looking at the EndSARS protest aftermath. Does Nigeria need the social media regulation? If you think so, well, drop your comments. We would love you to share your thoughts, and we get to share here. If you have questions, we have guests right here wanting to know, and maybe they will answer the questions that you have. And the question is, do you think Nigeria is ready or needs the social media regulation? Dr. Adejo, are you back? Can you hear me? Hello, doctor. So let's look deep into the violation of the freedom of speech, which is some arguments that we have seen or we have heard people say that if this social media regulation goes on, that it will hamper the freedom of people speaking their mind and calling the government to book or calling them to action. Now, when people deliberately share fake news capable of causing chaos, what do you think should happen to such a person? Back to you, Dr. Andy. Okay, Mr. Andy. You can hear that.
Sorry, I'll be a doctor soon because I'm doing my PhD, so I'll take that.
Yay! Okay, Dr.
And
Andy.
interestingly, my PhD thesis is in cyber warfare. So this is
Wow.
my bread and butter. This is something I
Mm-hmm.
know. So talking about infringing of human rights and the freedom, the right to speak, the freedom of speech, we already have that in the Constitution. And so
Okay.
if people are spreading misinformation and the like, you have libel and scandal laws already in existence. It's not a criminal case. It's a civil case. And so you can take them to court, prosecute them, and if found guilty, then you can say. Now, if in situations where it's leading to the death of someone, I think that's already adequately captured in the Cybercrime Act of 2015. Back, I think, between sections 18 to 24. Now, the problem with the new regulations, which we have seen, is that I think the Internet Falsehoods Bill, which was proposed, specifically speaks about utterances that make the government look in a bad light. Now, that's where Nigerians raise an eyebrow and say, what are you trying to say? How do you distinguish? We've never been able to identify fake news, which is why I like the fact that we now call it misinformation. But how do
Mm-hmm.
you identify what's fake or not? How do you identify the source? And so, because you know me, Andy Madaki, and that's why I'm on all socials, there may be an anon XYZ who is faceless, who nobody knows who he or she is because they're using
Yes.
an anonymous account. Those are the
Yes.
accounts spreading fake news. Those are the accounts originating the source. And so the influencers who may not be knowledgeable enough will take it and retweet it. How do you find the source? So what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing now is you're just taking the support system. but the source will remain free. So that doesn't stop the problem. So the misinformation will continue. How are you identifying it? And so it's not even fair if you understand the internet community, because a huge percentage are anonymous and you may never know them. And they may even be worse than the known faces. So working with the providers like Twitter, like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, to say how can we moderate comments which could be insightful or which could lead to loss of lives, and then fix it and flag it. That's what's happening in the US, as opposed to putting that burden on the people and trying to protect just the political elite.
Okay, so from what you mentioned, the Cybercrime Act of 2015, is it adequate enough to deal with the issue of fake news in Nigeria, or we need a new law to help fight the fake news?
So first of all, the Cybercrime Act of 2015, I personally feel was poorly written, and it was approved within about 15 minutes, along with close to 20 other bills before the 7th Assembly handed over to the 8th Assembly. So it was rushed work. So a bunch of bills were just signed and approved like 2 days before they handed over.
So it's safe to say they never expected it. The way Nigerians say it, what is happening right now? Okay.
Yes, and
so what can
some
be
of them are
done?
now out of. So what can be done is, how about they do public hearings to amend the Cybercrime Act of 2015? Why bring in new laws? So none of them have said that. The laws which we have may not adequately interpret the fake news situation which we have right now. But we have provisions to prosecute on those cases, yes. But if it's so important, you have the Cybercrime Act. Open it up, call for a public hearing, and say, how can we amend this together, and do it with full transparency. Then that would be good. However, laws are not necessarily the problem in Nigeria, it's implementation. So by the time whatever regulation is put in place, it will just be used to pick people. We've seen in the last 1 week, several people who, quote unquote, had vital voices in the EndSARS protest are now being arrested. Some of them had their bank accounts blocked, and we see this personally happening. So even without the laws being put in place, this is already happening. So by creating such anti-social media bills, it gives legitimacy to infringing of people's human rights. Prosecute them based on the laws which you have, which are not even criminal cases, unless you can identify and tie it to loss of life or damage to critical national infrastructure. But that's not even happening yet. And people are already, this is the bad governance and police brutality which people
Well, some will
were
argue
protesting
that
against.
people lost their lives this past protests. And so the actions taken is really warranted, some people will say. What do you think?
Two different scenarios. That wasn't as a result of the EndSARS protest. That was as a result of people's frustration with the situation. And so they looked for any avenue which they could to do what they did. It wasn't as a result of the EndSARS protest. Like I said, EndSARS, the protest was just to give the government an idea of what maybe their advisors are not telling them, of what maybe they don't know. But the reality is what you see on the street. So if you're even talking about people who lost their lives, did you see the number of people who ran to attack warehouses with palliatives? The
Yes.
multitude. Will you call those hoodlums? Will you call those criminals? Will you call those touts? Do you think it's social media that led to them going to break into those warehouses, take palliatives, which was meant for them? You know what I mean? So tagging it to EndSARS is different. Criminal cases should be prosecuted as criminal cases. Some people attacked national police buildings and like. Some people looted government property. Investigate them and prosecute them. That I understand. But don't say it's as a result of EndSARS. Don't say it's as a result of utterances. It's as a result of the frustration of the people. Unemployment rose from 18% to 23% and now to 27%. Inflation rate in the last 2 months increased by 0.4%. Everyone is complaining of increasing food prices. That's not the creation of social media. And so that's why I say the government should look at social media and hear the cries of the people and use it to fix their solution, as opposed to just staying in their corner and just throwing out whatever solution they feel. They should see it as a research tool to fix the problems. Those are two different situations. It's not as a result of social media.
Now you say it's a research tool. They should see it as a research tool. Well, whose responsibility is it to do research on this issue at this time? Who are we calling out?
you have the National Orientation Agency. That's their job. You have um, you have FRCN, which is the media powerhouse of the country. You have the
we
Ministry
do.
of Information. Yeah, so you're doing your part.
We're doing our own
But
part. Yes.
yes, which is why we're glad that you can do this. But I also work in the media. I present a TV show on AIT, and AIT channels and Paradise TV got sanctioned recently for airing what we saw live on the streets. You know what I mean? And so, as opposed to just saying it and picking on this is wrong and preventing governmental embarrassment, how can you use it to fix? The National Orientation Agency should understand what's going on. It's the Ministry of Information that's even pushing, as was seen on video in the
Mm.
minister's submission to the House of Reps. They're the ones asking for this to be regulated. I've not had a public hearing saying, come, let's hear what you people have to say. And you don't even need a public hearing. Go on social media and hear what people are saying and
Mm-hmm.
stop hearing the wrong thing. People are
Oh
saying,
well,
stop
we
bad
have a
government.
comment. Yeah, stop hearing the wrong thing. Well, somebody is saying something here. ABM Othram. He says the servers that provide this service, I mean, maybe the one we're using now, can play a vital role in curbing the ban of fake information. However, when it infringes on the right of the citizens to speech, then our democracy should have a new name, as his thoughts. Thank you, Abiem, for your thoughts. You can send your comments, also share your thoughts on what you think. If Nigeria needs the social media bill or social media regulation, let us know, and then we take it. And if you have a question, you answer. We have Mr. Andy here, or Dr. Andy, who would help answer the questions. So some youths saying their mind on social media have become so intolerant with the way they're intolerant of dissenting views from others, that it has degenerated to the level that people with large followings share personal details of their opponents, like their phone numbers, house address. We saw that happen during the violence that occurred, and then telling people to do their thing. So how did we even get here? And how do you think this can be tackled?
So, and as a cybersecurity person, I
Mm-hmm.
will be objective and honest. What you see people doing, releasing personal information of people or opponents online, is what we call doxing. So it's like releasing a document on them. It's
Mm-hmm.
illegal. It's wrong,
Yeah.
and it's a crime because that's yeah, you're misusing people's personal information, and in some cases, they are giving other people unauthorized access to someone else's personal information and life. And so, by putting someone's phone number, which wasn't previously in the public domain, or email out there, targeting the person for harassment, then that's wrong. I wouldn't defend that. So, in every society, you have the good and the bad. In politics, you have the good and the bad. But the problems of the bad shouldn't be put on every single person. In the same vein, while I understand the demand and the calls for EndSARS, I don't support people going to spray paint on the roads, putting comments, because now you're defacing public property. It may be other people's form of rebellion, but I stand against it. If you're defacing public property and then they arrest you, then I wouldn't be able to put my voice and say, why are you doing this? So, yes, we need to understand the lines, and we also need to be honest with ourselves. If we're trying to hold government accountable and responsible, we need to hold ourselves, young people, accountable and responsible. And so, for people who are spreading this fake news using their influence, deliberately targeting opponents, then that becomes a problem. However, for public, for people in the public space, like public officials, when they put the email, so for instance, if you're in the House of Reps or National Assembly, and the National Assembly website has your phone number, and the National Assembly website has your email address, if someone copies and puts on social media saying, see your rep, contact them, then it's
Yes.
not a crime because
Okay.
that's already the public domain. So if it's
Okay.
on the National Assembly website, their phone number and email, and you copy it and post on Twitter and other places and say, get in touch with your rep, that's not a problem. But when you say deal with him, when you say attack him, then maybe
Hmm.
that's a
Oh, do
threat.
your thing.
How? Yes, but if it wasn't a number which was in the private domain,
Okay.
then that could be wrong. I saw someone put numbers of the president on online, and I was like, if it was phone number, if it was emails, or if it was
Yeah.
publicly accessible, then I understand. But targeting people for harassment and instructing that harassment becomes a problem and could be used against you. So I wouldn't defend that. All I'm saying is you already have laws to deal with all of these problems. And so use what you have. Don't bring new laws to change things which favor you.
All right. Well, there's a popular saying. I don't know if it's a social media balance or something, but they say, "Don't kill fake news. If you don't kill fake news will kill us." So, in the absence of social media regulation, how do you think the menace of fake news can be tackled?
You know what? Have you ever been
Mm-hmm.
to a newsstand before where they sell newspapers in the
Yes.
mornings? Have you
Yes.
ever been? You've been to a hair salon.
Mm-hmm.
For
Several
men,
times.
you've been to barber shops.
All of
You hear
them.
the
All these places I've been to.
so
Yes.
these three places. You hear the conversations which go on there. It's the same
Mm.
conversations you are seeing on social media.
Okay.
It's the same conversations you are seeing, hearing in the mama put and in the mechanic village. And so the best way to counter fake news is by putting out real news and putting it out first. You have access to the same social media these people are using to misinform people. In modern terms, the person who is quiet becomes the guilty person. And so if somebody is saying, you are doing this, government is so good at withholding information that by the time they come to counter, it is already too late. And so if you don't tell your story, people will tell your story for you. If the government
Yeah.
isn't telling its story, the people will tell the story based on what they feel. And so the first way to tackle it is by the government passing out the right information without misinforming people. There was the Lekki shootings which happened, and someone at Sahara Reporters posted picture and a video and a news report. What the Nigerian army handled on social media did was to just put a sticker on it saying fake news. They didn't say
Yes.
this is fake news because we have accounted for all our soldiers and nobody was
Okay.
here. That's how
Okay.
to counter it. You cannot just say fake news. You say this is fake news because at this time, XYZ people were accounted for. They were here and these were their instructions. But come out and say fake news. Now the same military has admitted to being there. Now they're saying it wasn't live bullets. And so the misinformation is all around. So the people in power can only stop fake news by countering it with the real news. We should also advise the people, the general public, to verify first and take into cognizance that most of these influencers have no professional background. Some of them
Mm-hmm.
got popular because of music. And so, will I take election reform advice from Naira Mali? I strongly doubt that. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Will I take technology advice from small doctor? I strongly doubt that. I would
But these
verify.
people have large following. So how can
I
they
understand. This is
help
what I'm
now?
saying.
Because people are looking up to them in the issue
That
of tackling fake news. How can they help?
by us educating people that these guys may have a platform and the numbers, but they don't know it all. Like
Okay.
studying a PhD, I've learned that even a PhD doesn't make somebody intelligent. Sometimes it just gives credibility to your ignorance. And so we need to understand and educate ourselves that nobody holds absolute knowledge. How about you verify? We just need to preach that verification process. Verify, verify, verify. Good example, see the US election. You've seen people in power, people in government coming out to misinform people actively. And if they are the one in government, if not for the moderators, the internet service providers, the platform providers, like the person who commented spoke about, to check some of this news, then would have been in a deep hole. So government should maybe, and I don't even support it, have conversations with the likes of Twitter and Facebook and say, listen, you have a huge audience in Nigeria. Increase your staff strength
Mm-hmm.
and let's work together to counter misinformation. But fake news, as it's termed, depends on whose side of the table the news is coming from. And so
Yeah.
why it's called fake news and even hate speech, there'll be legal ways to jump around it. So call it what it is, misinformation. And then how do we deal with misinformation? By providing the right information across border and verifying.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Andy Madaki and Dr. Andy Madaki in the
Incoming.
nearest future.
Yeah.
But before you go, final thoughts. What message do you have for youths on social media regarding retweeting, sharing, and the impact of fake news in general to the society?
So my advice for young people is they need to learn more, study more about advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
There's activism, but there's advocacy. How do you want, when you ask for something, you should have an answer in your head. So if I want something and I'm asking, I should know what I'm asking for. And so understand advocacy that beyond the fight, sometimes you may need to come to the table and have conversations. And so even if there's a trust deficit, use your platform and use your privilege to speak the truth at all time. And so we have a situation where most young people just want to shout and follow the crowd, but use your own faculty to think for yourself and see also from the advocacy part. Preparation would help in fixing most of the problems. The Not Too Young to Run bill, which was signed into law, besides the marches on the streets, they had advocacy meetings in all the states with National Assembly, House of Reps, Senate. They had those conversations with the representatives to explain it first so that those people can carry the message. And so it's a
Yes.
handshake. It's not a generational battle between the young and the old. It's a battle for the soul of the nation, which is about getting things right. And so learn more about the case, read more about your history, so that when you have to vote, you're not waiting for 1 year to vote. You already know the history of your candidates and people before it gets to the polls. You are already mobilizing 3 years before, as opposed to say, in 2023, we'll show them, no, what are you doing now? How are you being influential and vital in your community, not just online? Relate with the people at a local level and use every opportunity to educate the next person. So if someone is going on the wrong tangent, tell the person, I hear you, but do you understand that there may be a different side to it? So we just need
Okay.
to learn more so we could teach more.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, for taking out time to do this with us in Youth Assembly today. We
You're
appreciate you
welcome.
always.
Always.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
yes, we looked at the EndSARS aftermath, the protest aftermath. Does Nigeria need social media regulation? And we've had Dr. Andy Madaki, a communications consultant, tackle issues with us and answer questions that we have for him. Well, we hope that you could retweet or share this video and tell a friend to come Click Naija, and you can follow us on our social media platforms. On Instagram, we're Click Naija1, and on Twitter, we are at Click Naija, and on Facebook here, share the story so that somebody is informed about sharing good news and not fake news, real news and not fake news. My name is Sylvia Ishebe. I hope to be back here tomorrow for another interesting edition of Youth Assembly. And yes, thank you again, Andy Madaki.
My pleasure.
Have a fantastic day, people. Bye for now. My producer has been Yoma UKJ. I wouldn't forget that. So have a fantastic day.